It's September, which means yes, we are back for more episodes of our London History podcast. It also means that thousands of UK GCSE English literature students will start to read the famous story by Robert Louis Stevenson, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. While the novella offers a wealth of educational potential for teenagers, its significance extends beyond the classroom setting, particularly for anyone interested in understanding Victorian London and its historical context, which is why I offer a Jekyll and Hyde walking tour. There are public dates on our website and also private tours. For young students, Stevenson's novella serves as an excellent introduction to Victorian literature, covering key themes such as duality of human nature, ethical dilemmas, and societal norms. It presents these themes in a narrative that is engaging, thought-provoking, and most importantly, relatable to a younger audience. In an age where questions about identity and morality are still very much relevant, this is a story which provides a platform for teenagers to grapple with these complex issues. Beyond its educational value for young readers, the novella is also a rich tapestry. Whether it's the respectable facade of Dr. Jekyll or the lurking menace of Mr. Hyde, each represents various aspects of London society at the time. Dr. Jekyll's stately residence and his professional standing as a doctor, and even meanwhile, the disreputable areas he frequents as Mr. Hyde illuminate the dark corners of the city, complete with their own moral ambiguities and social complexities. The enduring allure of Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is manifestly evident in its various adaptations and reinterpretations across multiple mediums. Since its initial publication in 1886, this seminal novella has transcended the boundaries of literature to become an indelible part of our cultural fabric. With themes as timeless as the duality of human nature, ethical dilemmas, and the tension between the civilised and primal aspects of humanity, it's little wonder that the story has seen so many lives beyond the printed page. In the realm of cinema, some of the earliest adaptations, such as the 1920 silent film starring John Barrymore, sought to capture the eerie atmosphere and moral urgency of the original text. The 1931 rendition starring Frederick March is particularly lauded, even earning March Academy Award for his dexterous portrayal of both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. By 1941, when Spacer Tracy took on the roles, the story was approached with a greater focus on psychological depth, reflecting shifts in societal understanding of mental health and human complexity. On the stage, Thomas Russell Sullivan's 1887 version, which was one of the inaugural adaptations contemporaneous with the novella itself. The story later found a home on Broadway in the 1990 musical Jekyll and Hyde, capturing audiences' attention with its evocative score. Touring exclusively in the UK, Nick Lane's 2017 play provides yet another nuanced interpretation for theatre aficionados. The world of opera has not been immune to the story's magnetism. Compositions by Evan House and Gerard Pape incorporate musical complexity to dissect the psychological entanglements and ethical quandaries to make the original tale so captivating. In the domain of modern reinterpretations, Dr. Jekyll finds himself reimagined as a Victorian-era superhero in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, played by Jason Fleming. The BBC's Jekyll catapults the character into the 21st century, re-envisaged as a contemporary scientist. Even the 2014 film The Mummy attempted to integrate Dr. Jekyll, played by Russell Crowe, albeit with a portrayal that many considered to be unfulfilled in its potential. Across these varied adaptations and interpretations, what emerges is the remarkable versatility and timelessness of Stevenson's novella. The story's potent themes and compelling characters continue to provide fertile ground for artistic experimentation, demonstrating that the question raised by The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are far from resolved, remaining as relevant and thought-provoking today as they were in the turbulent society landscape of Victorian London. So what is it in this story which has captured the imagination of generations? In order to answer that, we need to look a little closer at the story and the society in which the story is set. So let's start with the basics. What is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? It was penned by Robert Louis Stevenson in 1885, published in January 1886, and it's a seminal work that delves into the complexities of human. The novella presents Dr. Henry Jekyll, a respectable London scientist who, in an experiment aimed at separating the good and evil components of his nature, inadvertently creates Mr. Edward Hyde, a repugnant alter ego devoid of social and moral restraint. The story unfolds as a mystery narrated through multiple perspectives that culminates in the tragic disintegration of Dr. Jekyll's life as he loses control over Mr. Hyde. Writer Stephen King, aka the King of Horror, said, "If Bram Stoker's Dracula leaves one with the sensation of having been struck down by a massive 400-page wall of horror, then Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is like the sudden moral jab of an ice pick." One of the lesser known but captivating details Stevenson's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is the story of its genesis. Stevenson reportedly wrote the first draft in a feverish burst of inspiration, completing it within a few days whilst on holiday. However, upon reading it, his wife Fanny offered a critique that led him to burn the manuscript and start anew. The novella that exists today is actually the second draft, rewritten in another similarly short period of intense creativity. This process of creation and recreation, of wrestling with a narrative until it reaches its most potent form, adds another layer to our understanding of the novella. It allows us to appreciate the complexity and depth of thought that went into crafting this exploration of human duality, making the work all the more intriguing and worthy of discussion, especially for those deeply interested in Victorian literature and culture. The tale is compelling for several reasons. Firstly, it acts as an incisive critique of Victorian society, which was rife with stark social contrasts and rigid moral codes, and the split between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde can be seen as an allegory for the double-sided existence led by many in this era, a life of surface-level propriety masking deeper human impulses. Secondly, the novella broaches this ethical concerns stemming from scientific advancements. It raises profound questions about the responsibilities that came with scientific discovery and innovation. It's the same issue as highlighted in Jurassic Park, when Dr. Ian Malcolm, he talks to John Hammond and he says, "But your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should." The narrative portrays the dire consequences of bypassing ethical considerations in the pursuit of knowledge, reflecting the anxieties of a society standing at the crossroads of tradition and modernity. Thirdly, the book's psychological dimensions are timeless. The character of Dr. Jekyll serves as an early exploration of the subconscious mind, predating Freudian psychology but echoing many themes that would later become central to the field. Dr. Jekyll's transformation into Mr. Hyde is not merely a physical one. It reflects a moral schism, separating his virtuous self from his baser instincts. This was a theme that resonated strongly with Victorian audiences, given the period's focus on moral rectitude and public decency. Stevenson employs an intricate narrative structure, making extensive use of multiple perspectives, letters, documents to gradually unfold the story's mysteries. This adds a layer of suspense and keeps the reader engaged as one navigates through the complicated moral landscape the characters inhabit. It allows Stevenson to avoid a didactic tone, instead posing questions about identity and morality without providing easy answers. Lastly, the narrative style itself, a blend of mystery, horror, and psychological drama, makes it an engaging read. The term Jekyll and Hyde has entered everyday language, symbolising any form of moral or psychological dualism, indicating the story's long-lasting impact on broader cultural understandings of identity and morality. Now, I've used this word a lot. Novella. Why is it a novella and not a novel? Well, the classification of Strange Case and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a novella rather than a novel due to several factors encompassing length, scope and structural focus. Let's talk about length. Well, firstly, the text is considerably shorter than what is typically considered a novel. Novels offer an expansive portrayal not only of a story but also of characters, settings, subplots and themes. A novella, however, tends to be more focused, honing in on a single idea, event or a set of characters. Jekyll and Hyde falls into this category, with its compact size allowing for a swift but deep examination of its central theme, the duality of human nature. Novels also explore multiple themes, subplots, wide array of characters, and in contrast, Jekyll and Hyde has a limited scope. It doesn't venture into subplots or an extensive exploration of secondary characters. Instead, it fixates almost exclusively on Dr. Jekyll and his alter ego, Mr. Hyde, and also the moral implications of their existence. The story is focused on this central issue, exploring it in depth, but without the multiple layers of complexity that one might expect in a full-length novel. The structure of a novella is often more straightforward than that of a novel, usually following a linear narrative or employing fewer narrative techniques. In Jekyll and Hyde, we see the story largely unfold through the eyes of the lawyer Mr. Utterson, and it follows a fairly straightforward narrative arc leading to the revelation of Jekyll and Hyde's relationship. This focused narrative lens suits the novella form well, facilitating a targeted exploration of the work's key themes. The novella form also allows for a concentrated impact. The brevity of the text ensures the moral and psychological complexities are presented in a way that grips the reader quickly, leaving little room for distraction. We sometimes forget that publishing a book does require a publisher, and in this case the publisher was Longmans, Green & Co. By the 1880s, they had become an established cornerstone in the realm of publishing, wielding considerable influence over both the intellectual and cultural landscape of Victorian Britain. The decade witnessed a flourish of diverse publications from Longmans that catered to an array of readership interests, reading from the scholarly to the general public. Indeed, Longmans' repertoire of published work served as a veritable mirror to the multifaceted nature of Victorian society, culture, and intellectual pursuits. The origins of Longmans trace back to 1724, when Thomas Longman established what would later become the world's oldest commercial imprint in London. Longman was a pioneering spirit. He was one of the esteemed group of booksellers responsible for the publication of Dr. Samuel Johnson's monumental dictionary between 1746 and 1755. Following his death in 1755, the enterprise was bequeathed to his nephew, also named Thomas Longman, who expanded its colonial trade exponentially. Over the years, Longman established an exceptional literary portfolio by publishing the works of luminaries such as Wordsworth, Coleridge, Southey and Scott, and also acted as the London agent for the influential Edinburgh Review. The 1880s were a golden era for Longmans, Green & Co. in terms of literary contributions. Alfred Lord Tennyson, the poet laureate, was also one of the prestigious authors whose works adorned Longman's catalogue during this period, adding to an aura of distinguished literary merit to the publisher. Thomas Hughes' seminal work, Thomas Brown's School Days, originally published in 1857, saw numerous editions and reprints during the 1880s. The esteemed Henry James, celebrated for his psychologically nuanced novels, also found a platform with Longmans. His intricate explorations into the complexities of the human psyche resonated with the educated Victorian elite, further enhancing Longman's reputation for literary excellence. Longman's intellectual reach wasn't confined to literature. It also encompassed groundbreaking scientific discourse. Their catalogue boasted seminal treatises in the fields of natural science, medicine and engineering, making them a hub for academic exploration. Publishers Longmans, Green & Co. were in a strong enough position to offer Stevenson a sum of £25 for the English rights of his manuscript, a respectable amount at the time. This investment was made in the understanding that Stevenson's work had the potential to resonate with a wide audience, thereby becoming a valuable intellectual property for the publisher. The decision proved to be fortuitous, as The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde achieved immediate success upon its release. Critically, the book was received with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Some reviewers praised Stevenson's innovative storytelling and the novella's exploration of complex psychological themes. Others, however, were disturbed by its bleak view of human nature and considered it a cautionary tale of the potential dangers posed by unbridled scientific inquiry. The first press run consisted of 3,000 copies, which sold out within a mere 6 days of its publication. This rapid sellout was a phenomenal achievement given by the standards of the day, and it dramatically underscored Longman's acumen as a discerning publisher. The novella quickly captured the public's imagination and became an instant success. Its themes resonated powerfully with Victorians who were grappling with issues of morality, identity, and the implications of scientific advancement, much like Dr. Jekyll himself. The novella was then reprinted several times in quick succession to meet public demand. The Dictionary of National Biography describes the novella as published as a Shilling shocker, a form of the type in fashion. It became instantly popular, was quoted from 1,000 pulpits, was translated into German, French and Danish, and the names of its 2 chief characters have passed into the common stock of proverbial allusion. The key factor in the novella's broad appeal was its pricing strategy. Priced at 1 shilling in its initial edition, released in January 1886, the novella was accessible to a diverse readership. Its affordability was crucial in enabling the book to cross social boundaries. It wasn't merely the educated elite or scholars who were purchasing this text, oh no, but members of the burgeoning middle class who had both the education to appreciate the story and the means to purchase it. These were individuals keen on self-improvement and cultural engagement, and Stevenson's work offered them a compelling story interwoven with these themes. It's always tricky trying to put a value on something from another period in time. If we're saying that the novella was initially sold for 1 shilling, well, there were 12 pennies in a shilling and 20 shillings to the pound. In 1888, a skilled clerk could expect to buy a Sunday best outfit for £2 10 shillings and a workday suit for £2, which is 40 shillings. In the late 19th century, Charles Booth estimated that a working family needed an income of at least 18 to 21 shillings a week, which was about £5 per annum, just to get by, and about 22 to 30 shillings a week, which was £57 to £78 per annum, to be comfortable. In 1886, a senior clerk living in a terraced house in London with a family and a live-in servant would require a salary in the region of £100, which today is about £16,629.33. The latter half of the 1880s was a period of profound transformation and turbulence, both within London and across the broader British Empire. This tumultuous era served as the backdrop of Robert Louis Stevenson's groundbreaking novella. The key events for these years, from legislative shifts and imperial endeavours to the rise of social reform movements, catalysed public discourse on a plethora of pressing issues, which of many find echoes in Stevenson's dark tale. The preoccupation with moral conduct and social norms, evidenced by laws like the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, demonstrated society's attempt to legislate morality, an issue keenly explored. Imperial pursuits like the Mahdist War raised crucial ethical questions, both about the colonial self and the other, which paralleled the novella's theme of identity and ethical ambiguity. As the class divide widened and dissatisfaction grew, organisations like the Fabian Society emerged, advocating for social justice and change. Such calls for reform were set against the backdrop of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde's contrasting lifestyles, behaviour, effectively mirroring the stark social inequalities of the time. And if you want to learn more about that, then I suggest you listen to episode 103 and episode 104, both about women's rights activist Annie Besant, who was also founder of the Fabian Society, and episode 103 is about her early life and also how mid-Victorian London was. The internal struggles for political autonomy, evidenced by the first Home Rule Bill for Ireland, magnified the complexities of national identity, akin to the individual identity struggles portrayed in the novella. And finally, social commentaries like Charles Booth's report on London poverty that threw the spotlight on societal disparities, adding yet another layer of depth to the ethical dilemmas that animate Stevenson's story. Let's have a look now more specifically at London in 1885, when the novella was written. London was a bustling metropolis, or should I say bursting. In 1801, London's population is recorded to having surpassed 1 million for the very first time in its history. By 1881, the population had surpassed 6.6 million. It was the capital of the British Empire and one of the largest cities in the world. It was a centre of commerce, finance and culture. However, this prosperity coexisted with severe poverty and social inequality. London society was deeply stratified. The class system was rigid and upward mobility was challenging. The wealthy elite, including professionals like lawyers and doctors to whom Dr. Jekyll would have belonged, lived in a separate world from the working class and the impoverished, who were often relegated to the city's East End and other less prosperous areas, like Soho. Affluent neighbourhoods with stately mansions and lush parks were juxtaposed against overcrowded slums rife with squalor and disease. It was an exciting place with every opportunity for those who could afford it, and an overcrowded, relentlessly unforgiving maze for those who couldn't. The social stratification found its way into the novella, illustrating the dual nature not just of individuals, but also of the city itself. Victorians were very much attuned to social status and decorum. Leisure activities often depended on one's social standing. The wealthy elite would frequent opera houses, theatres and private clubs, while the middle classes might attend public lectures, musical soirees and perhaps a less expensive tea at the opera. The working class, often limited by time and money, would engage in simpler pleasures like visiting public houses, attending music halls for a good old sing-song, or enjoying a day out at public parks like Hyde Park or the new Victoria Park. By the time Stevenson's novella made its appearance in 1886, London was a city at the zenith of its influence. As the epicentre of an empire on which the sun never set, London's port was a bustling hive of activity, importing goods from all corners of the globe. The city was a veritable hub of commercial enterprise, with the London Stock Exchange and numerous banks solidifying its standing as a global financial centre. The British pound was the world's dominant reserve currency, and the city was where enormous sums changed hands daily. The affluence and power concentrated in this square mile were palpable, reflected in the grand architecture and the well-dressed professionals who flocked to its precincts. Artists, writers and intellectuals flocked to the metropolis, making it a cradle of culture and innovation. The River Thames was the arterial route that facilitated London's trading prowess. A hive of activity, the docks were a complex work unto themselves, employing tens of thousands in roles that ranged from shipbuilders to stevedores. The smell of fish, tar and exotic spices mingled in the air as a diverse range of goods passed through on a daily basis. Areas like Wapping and Rotherhithe were synonymous with maritime history, often populated by working-class communities whose livelihood were inextricably tied to the river. The service sector expanded to meet the plethora of needs by this expanding population. Everything from sanitation to retail required an army of workers. Coaching inns gave way to more formal hotels requiring staff, ranging from chambermaids to concierges. Public houses, eateries and shops lined the streets, serving both the city's residents and its many visitors. Additionally, the domestic staff required to maintain the increasingly complex households of the wealthy became a significant source of employment. This led to the proliferation of agencies and middlemen aimed at supplying cooks, maids and butlers to the city's elite. The diversity of employment opportunities attracted a mix of people from various walks of life, both from within the British Isles and beyond. Yet this economic boom coexisted with significant social inequality. The affluence found in the West End was sharply contrasted by the poverty and the squalor in areas like Whitechapel and Spitalfields. The juxtaposition of prosperity and deprivation side by side gave rise to complex social dynamics that were often fraught with tension. The latter half of the 19th century heralded a time of immense change as burgeoning industrialisation influenced not just the economy, but also the ways in which people moved, interacted, and perceived their surroundings. Each form of transport, be it the world's first underground, the horse-drawn omnibus and cabs, and enduring Thames as a waterway, or the burgeoning popularity of the bicycle, contributed to its own layer of the complex tapestry that was London in the 1880s. These various modes of travel did more than merely transport people from the point of A to point B. They were instrumental in shaping social hierarchies, influencing employment, and even altering psychological perceptions of the city's size and accessibility. Victorian fashion in 1886 was characterised by its formality and intricacy. For men, three-piece suits were standard, often with a waistcoat and bowler hat or top hat, depending on what society allowed. Women's fashion was elaborate, featuring bustles, high collars and corsets. The more affluent would have multiple outfits for different times of the days and activities, while the working class had simpler, more functional attire. A Victorian gentleman's attire was an emblem of his social status and moral character. The ensemble would generally consist of a bespoke, tailored three-piece suit made from a fine wool or a blend of cotton and linen in warmer months. The waistcoat was an essential element, adding an additional layer of formality. Dark colours such as black, navy and charcoal grey were prevalent, especially for business and formal occasions. For headgear, top hats were standard for formal events, while bowler hats were more common for everyday wear. Shoes were typically leather, highly polished, and complemented by equally pristine leather gloves. The cane was not necessarily a requirement, but it was a popular accessory among gentlemen. It served various purposes: a fashion statement, a symbol of authority and wealth, a functional aid for walking, and a weapon for self-defence should the need arise. Some canes even had hidden compartments for items like flasks or cigars. It was a versatile accessory that could convey a gentleman's style and discernment. Dr. Jekyll is initially presented as a man of status, a respected professional who is the epitome of Victorian respectability. The cane he owns, described as a large, handsome cane with a heavy head of a rare wood, signifies this societal standing. When Mr. Hyde uses this same cane to commit a violent act, it becomes an instrument that not only shatters the life of an innocent, but also the veneer of Jekyll's respectability. The cane's dual function as both an accessory and a practical walking aid reflects the duality that is central to the story of Jekyll and Hyde. Just as a cane could have had a hidden compartment or flask or cigar, revealing a more hedonistic or secretive side to its owner, Dr. Jekyll has a hidden side to his personality, which he reveals in the form of Mr. Hyde. Etiquette and manners were the cornerstones of a Victorian gentleman's behaviour. A gentleman was expected to be courteous, disciplined, and above all, honourable. Public displays of emotion were frowned upon. Restraint and composure were prized. The code of chivalry extended to how gentlemen treated ladies, standing when a woman entered the room, holding doors open, and offering a seat were standard practices. The expectations of a gentleman's behaviour were communicated through various channels. Etiquette manuals were widely available and provided detailed guidelines on proper conduct. These manuals were often read and discussed in households to ensure that the younger generation understood the societal norms too. Additionally, schools, especially the public schools like Eton and Harrow, played a significant role in instilling these values. Socialisation within family and social circles further reinforced these standards. Public figures, from politicians to royalty, also served as models of gentlemanly behaviour. The concept of the Victorian gentleman was not just an ideal, but an influence that permeated all aspects of society, from laws to literature. For example, the conduct of a gentleman was often reflected in legal matters, when a gentleman's word or handshake was considered almost as binding as a written contract. Literature of the time, including works like The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde or David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, often grappled with the complexities and contradictions inherent in this social construct. The Victorian era idealised women as the angels of the home, expected to be moral, virtuous, and primarily concerned with home and family. Qualities such as modesty, piety, and submissiveness were highly valued. Women were discouraged from speaking too loudly or laughing too much in public, and even their physical movements were expected to be graceful and restrained. A lady's role was often relegated to social responsibilities, which included hosting and attending social functions, managing domestic staff, and raising well-mannered children. Saying all that, though, the novella is notable for its conspicuous absence of prominent female characters, particularly those of a respectable nature. The world that Stevenson portrays is predominantly masculine, centred around male friendships, professional relationships, and the moral struggle of its male characters. Women, when they do appear, are often on the periphery of the narrative, usually serving as witnesses or incidental figures rather than active participants. For example, the maid who witnesses the horrifying act of violence perpetrated by Mr. Hyde against Sir Danvers Carew serves merely as a vehicle for advancing the plot. She is not a fully developed character and exists mainly to substantiate the atrocity. She's made out to be an unreliable witness and also an emotional one. Similarly, other women, often nameless and without distinct identities, appear briefly only to vanish once their specific function within the story has been filled. These roles generally reflect the Victorian stereotype of women as weak or overly emotional, and so perpetuating this dichotomy of male rationality and female emotionality. The absence of respectable women is particularly interesting, as the novella explores moral duplicity and the societal masks people wear. One might expect the inclusion of virtuous female characters to counterbalance the depravity that Mr. Hyde represents. But Stevenson's London is devoid of such figures. The lack of respectable women to serve as moral anchors in the story underscores the pervasive darkness and corruption that infiltrate every single layer of society portrayed in the novella. In a work so preoccupied with morality, the absence of virtuous women heightens the sense of unease and imbalance that pervades the text. This absence is also reflective of the gender norms and expectations of Stevenson's time. Victorian society was rife with rigid expectations about women's role, primarily confining them to the domestic sphere. Literature of the period often reflected these norms, presenting women either as virtuous, angelic figures or as fallen women. There's no halfway house. One could argue that the lack of female presence serves to emphasise the flawed masculinity and moral corruption of the central male characters. Or was it that Stevenson thought women weren't important enough to include? These were professional men, and all were bachelors. London serves as more than a mere backdrop in this novella. It symbolises the larger societal hypocrisy, the dichotomy between London's outwardly respectable facades and the grim realities that lie behind them. The city is depicted as a labyrinth of narrow streets and dark alleys, a place where one can easily lose oneself, literally and metaphorically. Dr. Jekyll, a man of status and respectability, would have moved in ways befitting his social status. He lived in a grand house with a front door worn by hands of many thousands, indicative of its location in a reputable neighbourhood. We can infer that Jekyll would have employed the typical modes of transport of gentlemen would horse-drawn carriages, particularly when visiting professional associates or attending social engagements. Mr. Hyde, on the other hand, uses less reputable paths. He enters and exits Jekyll's house through the back door, which opens into a courtyard connected to a dark alley. His movements are often described as quick and almost animalistic, and is seen on foot, sneaking through the less frequented roads and lanes. When Mr. Utterson walks around London, he is walking with purpose. He's meeting his cousin, and they walk when they don't talk to one another. It's still respectable, but it's organised and in the open and in the light. The city itself serves as more than just a backdrop. It's a character in its own right, with its labyrinth of streets and contrasting neighbourhoods mirroring the complex psychological landscape of the characters. The city, like the characters, harbours its own dual nature, one of grandeur and squalor, virtue and vice. The way characters move through the city serve to deepen our understanding of their psychological and moral complexities. The setting of Victorian London, with its rigid yet permeable social boundaries, offers a physical manifestation of the story's underlying tensions. In the novella, Dr. Henry Jekyll is a man of science, a respected physician and chemist who would likely have been associated with such prestigious medical circles. Although the specific location of his practice is not stated, his social status and the grandeur of his home suggest that he would have been part of this elite medical community. The fact that the best doctors practiced in areas like Harley Street is reflective of the broader Victorian values of reputation and social standing. Dr. Jekyll, too, is initially portrayed as a man of impeccable social standing, a smooth-faced man of 50, highly respected in his community. Hospitals like St. Bartholomew's and Guy's were hubs for medical research and training, places where science was pushing the boundaries of what was understood about the human body and mind. Jekyll's own experimental forays into the duality of human nature reflect the scientific zeitgeist of the time, albeit with a much darker outcome. It's plausible that Jekyll's credentials and interests would have aligned with the cutting-edge research taking place in these institutions. The novella raises questions about the ethical implications of scientific advancement. Jekyll's transformation into Hyde can be seen as a metaphorical journey into the uncharted territories of medical science, where ethical considerations may be cast aside in the quest for knowledge. This notion could be juxtaposed with contemporary debates occurring with the medical profession in Victorian London, such as the use of anaesthesia, which was relatively new and somewhat controversial at the time, or dissections and post-mortems, which were beginning to gain wider social acceptance for the sake of medical advancement. Soho is mentioned in the novella. In 1886, it was an area in transition. Once an upscale neighbourhood, by the late 19th century, it had gained a reputation for being somewhat bohemian and avant-garde, attracting artists, writers and other creatives. However, it also had a less salubrious side, associated with entertainment venues of varying repute and a certain level of seediness. It was a district of contrast, much like the dual personalities explored in Jekyll and Hyde. Soho, in all of its complexity, can be viewed as a geographical counterpart to the moral and psychological dualities that Stevenson masterfully delves into. And it is this London we explore on my Jekyll and Hyde tour. We get to explore the Gothic history of the West End, learn about inspirational prisoners, iconic medical men and body snatchers. And you can also come on a virtual tour with me as well. And if you're a little bit further away, then hopefully I've inspired you to read or indeed reread the book and get to know Victorian London a little better. That's all we've got time for now. Don't forget, photos and transcripts are available on the website. Just go to londonguidedwalks.co.uk/podcast and select episode 115, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.